I was working really, really hard, but I wasn't feeling like I had a ton to show for it. So those two variables combined really propelled me to look for a new way. Many of my colleagues were extremely well trained and very well versed in the clinical aspects of being in private practice. However, the gap, the issue, really the big problem was the other, what I would say 50% of the success equation, and that is the business acumen.
How do you help your clients find their ideal clients?
Once I committed and got really, really clear on who, and again, the challenges I can help solve and the results I can help people to achieve, things got so much easier. Everything from search engine optimization to messaging to the website to blogging, everything just fell into place.
What is the profit pyramid? Why is it crucial for health and wellness practitioners to diversify their income stream?
You got to be a good clinician. At the same time, we do want to bridge that gap on the business side of creating a profitable practice.
Hello and welcome back to the Vibrant Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emmy Brown, here with Melissa Gentile. Today, we have the brilliant Leslie Bitel, who is a sought-after business strategist and mentor specializing in guiding integrative and functional medicine professionals through the complexities of practice building. With a rich background as a highly trained dietitian and extensive experience in the pharmaceutical and diagnostic testing industries, Leslie uniquely combines clinical expertise with business acumen. For over a decade, she has empowered practitioners to overcome business challenges, attract ideal clients, and diversify income streams for thriving practices. Leslie offers private coaching classes, webinars, and more, dividing her time between Salida, Colorado, and Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We're so excited to learn more about Leslie's practice management strategies designed to help your functional medicine practice thrive. Thank you so much for being here, Leslie. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today.
We are too.
Leslie, I'm so excited for today's conversation because this really isn't a topic that we've touched too much on in great detail on this podcast. So before we get into the depths of all the business talk, I do want to ask you, can you walk us through how you first started as a registered dietitian and what was it like first kind of stepping into this field?
Yeah, so I ran a private practice for many years actually. And as you guys mentioned in the intro, pretty well trained in terms of integrative functional medicine and nutrition strategies, right? So had a wonderful opportunity, worked with all kinds of different patients, but I would say towards the kind of the end of my private practice days, I was really focused on neurological disorders, right? Implementing nutrition strategies and actually functional testing as well to help folks with like Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, chronic migraines, things like that. And what ended up happening, and I also had gone back, gotten an MBA, and had quite a long history of working, like you said, in the pharmaceutical and diagnostic health industries, right? So lots and lots of sales and marketing in the corporate sector and as well as marketing. So the reality is I recognized a gap, right? I talked to my colleagues. Many of them were kind of asking me, Leslie, how did you do this? How did you market this way? And a lot of kind of business related questions. So I started to realize that many of my colleagues were extremely well trained and very well versed in the clinical aspects of being in private practice. However, the gap, the issue, really the big problem was the other, what I would say 50% of the success equation, and that is the business acumen. So I stepped in about 10 and a half years ago and to fill this void in the market. And so what I do now is I help all kinds of practitioners, private practice practitioners, functional medicine, dietitians that are functional medicine trained, coaches, naturopathic doctors, like really the full gamut, right? Chinese medicine doctors, even chiropractors, anyone. I would say the common link overall is that they want to move their business online, right? They don't want location to be tied to a specific location. And they are looking for that location freedom, be able to build more revenue in their businesses, but also be able to do it in a way that really serves them, right? And I know we're going to talk more about this in a little while, but the big issue that I hear and see nowadays, especially, is just the burnout, right? Just working so very hard, trying so hard, to serve patients and clients, and then just kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have no time for myself. I'm not taking care of myself. So what I do now is help practitioners wherever they are, right? I have some coming to me who are kind of new in the private practice arena, and I have others that come to me who've been in private practice for a long time, and they kind of have a different set of challenges that we need to solve. But at the end of the day, it's all about being profitable, creating systems, so very important, and streamlining. And I would definitely say moving into a scalable business model, right? So that you can start to not necessarily move away from one-on-one, but if you wish, you can add additional services into the mix so you're not completely tied to one-on-one.
Totally. Yeah. We want to get into those strategies, Leslie, in a bit, but I'd love to know, what did that burnout look like for you? It's so personal, and I think that we need to talk about it more, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, and I can speak to this in two different roles, what I'm doing now as a business mentor and business strategist, but also when I ran my nutrition practice. So I'll start there with the latter. How's that? So at that time, I was running a practice. It was just me, right? I think I had a virtual assistant who was helping me with a few things like scheduling and things like that. But for the most part, it was just me. And it was a lot. And the thing that I found is that I felt like I was repeating myself, right? Just throughout the day, repeating myself over and over again. So that was a challenge. Not only I would come home and I would be so drained, right? Like, don't talk to me. I'm exhausted. I've been talking all day, right? So that was an issue. And the other issue was that I really was in a position where I needed a bump in my revenue, right? I was working really, really hard, but I wasn't feeling like I had a ton to show for it. So those two variables combined really propelled me to look for a new way of running my business. And that is really what we're going to talk about today, what I call the profit pyramid, which enables practitioners to generate multiple revenue streams or to create multiple revenue streams in their business. So that it really was just that feeling like I'm repeating myself. I wanted to be able to serve more people, but I was limited, right? I was already booked for the most part, which, yay, that's an exciting accomplishment in of itself. But I didn't really see a way to grow in the one-on-one model because I was already booked and I was already kind of charging the upper end of, at that time, what was acceptable in the marketplace, right? So I was kind of at a ceiling in terms of growth.
Maxed out.
Until I realized, okay, how can I grow? Well, really, there's three ways to grow. If you really think about it, you raise your prices. And like I said, I'd pretty much hit that ceiling. You raise your volume. Again, didn't really have any more hours to sell, right? So that wasn't an option. I would say the third choice, and probably the best choice, is to add additional revenue streams. So that is what I ended up doing. And the same is true when I started this practice, right? Doing business coaching. Thankfully, I got very busy, very full. And not too long after, kind of the same process, like, okay, I want to grow. Thankfully, I'd already been through it once, so I knew what to do this time around. So what I ended up doing was taking one of my steps that I teach all of my private clients. Sometimes I call those pillars. And I took that and I thought, okay, I can create a whole entire course or group program around this one topic. And at that time, it was the sales conversation, right? Looking at that entire sales process, including how do I have a really powerful discovery call? What does that look like? What's the roadmap to help me to get more yeses? So I kind of plucked that one pillar out of my entire body of work and created a 6-week course on that. And that was really how I moved into, again, the same exact framework. So really what we're going to talk about today works regardless of your target audience, your niche. It's really quite flexible in that way.
Awesome. And you're speaking to training providers in this method, Leslie, right? But the method is in and of itself having group visits, having multiple revenue streams, which we can kind of talk about as well. Because again, a lot of our listeners are providers. So I'd love to focus on really how to jump into that business side of things. And you call it the profit pyramid.
Yes.
And so I'd love to know, what is the profit pyramid? Why is it crucial for health and wellness practitioners to diversify their income stream?
I would say in terms of why it's so important, let's start there in terms of the diversification. We touched on burnout. I would say in addition to practitioners, and I hear this every single day in the work that I do, especially the practitioners that have been around for a while, right? They come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, all I do is, I don't have time for anything. I'm so overwhelmed and so busy. I don't feel like I can catch my breath, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's others who are just like, I can't do it anymore, like more inclined towards burnout. So really the rationale behind what I call the profit pyramid, and I'm going to go through what all those different layers are inside of the profit pyramid, but essentially what this business model allows you to do is it creates unlimited income opportunities, right?
Sounds great.
It's scalable, which we love, right?
Yes.
So with obviously, I think we're going to touch on one-on-one programs and packages a little bit and some of the advantages of moving to programs versus a la carte as well. And believe me, there is still a place for one-on-one. I do want to be really clear about that. I still take one-on-one clients. I've been doing this work for a really long time. Personally, I love my one-on-one, and I save room in my schedule to work with one-on-one clients. But there's other opportunities in terms of the business model. So basically the profit pyramid, it is like an ascension model. And so as we go up, what I call, again, the profit pyramid, we're going from free or low cost all the way up to your private one-on-one packages and programs. So it does allow you to generate more revenue in any given hour, especially when we move into kind of those middle levels that are what I would call scalable. Because the reality is it's going to take you the same amount of time if you've got, 5 people or 50 people, right? So it allows you to serve more people. It allows you to meet your patient or client where they are in terms of their budgetary constraints, right? Which is really quite nice. So you've got a variety of different offers that you can extend to your patients and clients at a variety of different price points. And I would say the other really important thing is time savings. So instead of repeating yourself all day, every day, you are instead moving into a place where you say it once in the group or you pre-record the educational component of what you're teaching, and that's it. And then maybe you're answering questions, or maybe you've got like a group Q&A where perhaps your patients or clients have already listened to the pre-recorded educational video, And then maybe you meet later in the week to do group coaching, Q&A, or personalization, right? So there's so many advantages, not to mention it just gives you some variety. Because the big thing I hear is just that sense of, I don't know, dread after a while from just doing one-on-one alone.
Right. We really need a mix, shake it up a little bit in the day.
Yeah. And there's
have a
so many
variety.
cool ways we can do this.
Yeah.
And Leslie, do you keep those kind of that time blocked for those one-on-ones more so because it's personally fulfilling?
It is very personally fulfilling. And to be honest, some of my clients prefer it, right? It comes at a higher price point, but some of my clients prefer one-on-one. Others maybe prefer to work in a group. So I do practice what I preach for the most part. Now, that being said, I will mention that I have worked with clients who come to me with the goal of completely moving away from one-on-one. And that's fine, right? Again, I meet the clinician or the practitioner where they're at. But in my work, yeah, I've got a few programs that I launch like once a year in a group format. And then kind of the rest of the time, I fill in my time with one-on-one work. So yeah, I enjoy it. And again, I'm meeting my clients and my practitioners where they are, in that some just prefer it. Like I said, some prefer group, right? Like I think both are great options. It just kind of depends on the person.
And probably depends on licensing too, correctly? Like depending on what they can and can't do, whether they can do one-on-one or it has to be in a group
True.
setting. But I do want to ask, what's one piece of advice that you would give to a practitioner that's listening in on this episode and they're just hearing about this profit pyramid for the first time? What's something that you would say to them if they're thinking about stepping into this, building this? What are some questions to consider?
Okay. Great question. So the one thing I really want to emphasize right out of the gate today is, so today we're going to talk about multiple levels, and I'm going to give you a description of, and maybe some examples of what those different levels of service could look like. But that being said, my big recommendation is to not get overwhelmed. We're kind of infamous for that, right? Like
Easier
we want
said
to
than
do it
done.
all. We're so excited about the possibilities.
Yeah.
I just want to highly recommend that you do one thing at a time instead of just, getting overwhelmed, doing a little of this, a little of that. So pick one thing, one program, one offer that you're going to focus on and see it through. So that is a big point of recommendation. The other thing is, I always say done is better than perfect, because many of
That's
us
a tough
really
one.
struggle with perfection. If I were to pick one big challenge that I see across the board, it's this like perfectionism. And it can really, really hold us back. So at a certain point, you just have to go with, okay, it's good enough. I'm going to put it out there. And I can always go back and make adjustments.
Exactly.
Right?
Always
I can
revise later if
always
possible.
improve it later. But if you are continually in this perfection mode, you're just never going to get it out there. And do remember, your people, your clients, your patients, they need this, right? So the more you just sit on it and tweak and, endlessly try to improve it, it takes up a lot of time and it does get frustrating. So I would just say, really try to hone in and focus on one thing. Look at what's in front of you, like what's next in the trajectory, the steps, and try to get away from perfectionism. And quite honestly, if you need support, get it, right? It's kind of similar to our, functional medicine, health clients and patients. Like, they often come in thinking, with the mindset of, I should be able to do this myself. I know I used to see that in my nutrition practice. And the reality is that, well, maybe you could do it yourself, but it is likely, kind of depending on where you're at. And I want to say that some people can absolutely figure it out and do it successfully. But if you do find that you're spinning your wheels, not sure what to work on, not sure how to tackle this, I would just say there's lots of great mentors out there who have gone before you, and they can help guide you and just save you so much time and frustration. So
Yeah.
those would be my recommendations.
One thing at a time and ask for help. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Ask
That's
for help. Don't be afraid to
Mhm.
ask for help.
Yeah,
Because
we
it
all need
is,
mentors.
the thing is that most of us didn't go get an MBA, right? Most of us are really great clinicians. We've got excellent training in that domain, which makes sense. So when it comes to marketing and all the things that we are looking at on the business side of building a practice, a lot of times those things we don't have training there. It's kind of like a foreign language, right? So get support in terms of that aspect. And I can actually just mention, so I remember when I had my private practice, and I do see this a lot, like we love getting more clinical training because I know that was the case for me. I had so many certifications and extra trainings and like
So
all these
true.
things, and nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. But at first, like it didn't occur to me that, wait a second, maybe I need to shift my focus, at least part of my focus, on building the business, right? Because I think I was under the impression the more certifications and the more clinical training I got, like the more revenue I would generate somehow. And sometimes I'll just say you need both, right? You need both. You got to be a good clinician. At the same time, we do want to kind of, again, bridge that gap on the business side of creating a profitable practice.
Yeah, we have to remember that what we do is still a business. We still gonna sell, we still gonna find our ideal clients, and we still have to operate on that side of our brain as well.
We really do.
Absolutely. So let's jump into some of these strategies now that we kind of
Okay.
have this a little bit of coaching before we go into it, which I so appreciate with those tips you just gave us, Leslie. Starting off with membership programs, benefits, implementation. How do you, and I also want to talk about kind of the, I don't know how you would say, really just valuing yourself. I think a lot of clinicians, I'm sure you've run into this, have a hard time asking for what they're worth. And so, especially when it comes to maybe as what seems like a big fee for a membership program, can you speak to that as we go
Yeah.
through and kind of how do you design membership programs?
Yeah. Well, in terms of, let's maybe try to tackle that garnering what you're worth question, because that's a pretty big topic. The thing that I want to share there is, I know this might sound surprising, perhaps, but it's actually not really about you. Believe it or not.
I love that.
It's really not. So like, and it's kind of a relief in a way, if you really think about it, because I hear that all the time. People come to me, Leslie, I don't feel comfortable tooting my own horn, right? And I don't feel comfortable asking for money, asking for like the premium price point that I know I am worth. And so at the end of the day, I really want to clarify, it is not about you. And I don't really think it's about like maybe a little bit selling yourself, but here's really what it is about. It is about connecting with that potential client by understanding their pain and struggle. So meeting them where they are and really embracing and understanding the implications of their struggle. Okay. So in marketing, it's the pain points, and then it's the results, the transformation. And that is what people are buying. Okay. Of course, they're going to want to make sure that you're legit, right? That you're properly trained and you've got the credentials and that sort of thing. But really, what they're most interested in is A, do you get me? And B, probably even more importantly, can you help me to achieve the results that I want to achieve? So in marketing, I would just say we want to be super clear on those two things. Actually, three things: who it is that we're targeting, right? The who. What are those struggles and pain points that you can help solve in your services, whether that be one-on-one, whether that be a group program, whatever the case is. And then what are those likely transformations that will most likely occur as a result of your work? And do you know that a lot of times people they get a little nervous, right? Like, ooh, but what if? There's a
Yes.
lot of what ifs, right?
Mhm.
So here's the thing. We can't guarantee results, right? You just can't. It's impossible, nor would I ever want you to. But we can say that this program was designed to help you to achieve X, Y, and Z based on my body of knowledge, all my training, all the latest research. I've compiled a program in such a way that it is designed to help you to go from where you are now, which is struggling, to your desired transformation, whether that be more energy. You really want to look at the results and outcomes that your patients and your clients deeply desire. And that is an integral part of your marketing message.
And kind of backtracking just a couple moments here, how do you help your clients find their ideal clients? Like, is there an exercise that you like to use? Because I can assume that you probably get a lot of eager practitioners that are like, I just want to help anybody and everybody. And it's oh, well, who specifically? How old are they? Like, what are they feeling? What do they struggle with? And like, that can be a hard thing to pinpoint. It's like, well, I just want to help everyone.
Oh, and I can so relate to that. When I first had my nutrition practice, I got to tell you, I really dug my heels in on that at first because I really was so eager to help people, and I can't even tell you how challenged I was at first, and just how I dug my heels in. Like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this without narrowing things down. Well, let me tell you, I got over it because it just. And I'm sure many people in our audience have heard this, but when you try to be everything to everyone, it doesn't work out so well. And the reason is because your message becomes very diluted, right? It's like it's all over the place. And people that are following you, like I'll just like, let's just take Instagram just as an example. Not to say you have to be on Instagram by any stretch. But like if you're following someone on Instagram and one day they're talking about, I don't know, gerontology, right? How to help elderly folks regain energy and meet their nutrient needs. Then the next day you're talking about pregnancy. And the next day you're talking about picky eating in your 3-year-old. Like people kind of lose, they're only interested in what they themselves, in all honesty, right? Like what they are struggling with. So you are going to lose people. And again, that message is going to be diluted. I know for me, before I niched down, I didn't even know what to write a blog about, right? I'm like, oh my God, because there's so many things. I really felt just not as organized, right? But then once I nailed it, once I committed and got really, really clear on who, and again, the challenges I can help solve and the results I can help people to achieve, things got so much easier. Everything from search engine optimization to messaging to the website to blogging, everything just kind of fell into place. So I do have a process that I take my clients through. Now, some people come to me and they pretty much know, or perhaps they've worked in a specific niche for a while and they don't want to change. But lots of people come to me either kind of scattered, kind of all over the place and unclear about the area of focus. And it really does cause them an enormous amount of stress, right? Because they know that they're kind of all over the place and it's just not working out and they're overwhelmed as a result. So I take them through kind of a process to identify what is the most viable niche in terms of all the potential possibilities that we're exploring, right? And I can share a few of those questions with you right now,
Sure.
if you think that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first thing is, does this target audience know they've got a problem? Right?
Mm,
And do they consider it a significant problem to solve? So in other words, you want to, and this is to the degree possible, right? Of course, there's going to be a lot of variance, a lot of like individuals within the niche. But as a general rule, can you confidently say that your chosen target audience and niche, like they already know they've got a problem? So you don't have to arm twist, right? It's kind of like swimming
interesting.
upstream. If you pick a niche where like either A, they don't really know it's a problem, you got to convince them and educate, like not to say it can't be done, but it's not your low hanging fruit. Let's just say that. It's going to be a lot of work to convince them. So you do want to look at that. You want to look at, are they willing to invest? Do they see the problem significant enough whereby they're willing to invest probably their hard-earned money as well as their time and other resources into solving it? Again, we're kind of guessing to a degree, but there's probably niches out there whereby they just don't fit the bill, right? They perhaps like they depending on your type of practice too. If it's cash based, this is especially important because you want to work with people that are willing to invest. So that's really important. You got to love working with them. I would also say, do you have a history of successfully serving this population, right? Because there really does, I think a lot of it, it's not so much selling yourself, but it is kind of an air of confidence that translates and projects to the patient or client. So do you have a history of successfully treating or working with a specific niche? So those are just a few of the things that we explore when it comes time to actually narrow things down and pick a target audience.
Super helpful. And so now that we've touched on understanding who our target audience is, and thank you so much, Melissa, for bringing that up, can we touch on a little bit of the group coaching and the passive income
Sure.
strategies? And I'd love to just throw out there for listeners, if you're not aware, shared medical appointments. This is a term that is being used now. It's being studied in research. So I saw a couple articles recently speaking to the benefits of shared medical appointments. So I'd love to know a little bit about how do you implement group coaching? How do you coach providers to implement group coaching? And kind of what is your take on that?
Okay. So here might be a good place for me to just give a really brief overview of what I have called the profit pyramid.
Yes.
And the reason that I love this model so much is because I think it's going to give our audience a lot of clarity in terms of how to approach this, like the different levels. And I'm also going to give an overview, like the different levels of scalable revenue streams and maybe even target kind of ballpark pricing, right? And some inclusions. I'll try to give you just kind of a brief overview because honestly, I could spend all day on this. So, and I know that we're also going to include it, I believe in the show notes, a free downloadable PDF that everyone can grab.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
This will be a graphic of the profit pyramid. All right. So just wanted to let everyone know about that. So basically what I call the profit pyramid, it's an ascension model. And just really simply, if you imagine a triangle, right? And kind of divide that triangle into, I think, like 5 different segments. So at the very tippy top of that triangle, I call this level A. This is your private client work, right? So it's at the top, it's your highest price point, assuming you're working in programs and packages, right? If it's a la carte, that might be a little different, but assuming you're working in programs and packages, the level A would be it's your one-on-one. They get the most customized and individualized attention from you at this level, which drives up the price point. And plus, it's just one-on-one, right? This is, for the most part, the one-on-one is not necessarily scalable in the typical sense. Although we do, and this is something I help my clients to do, because many people come to me still in the a la carte model, right? So I do think this is a great place to start in terms of conceptualizing how can I move my patients or clients more into a program format. So I guess the scalability isn't so much time spent, but it does follow a treatment protocol or model that the clinician comes up with, right? It's like his or her unique approach to helping the client get from pain and suffering over here to transformation. So that's your high end. And again, it's the higher end of the profit pyramid because it's the most personalized, right? So if you go to the base of your triangle, here you've got your free stuff. Okay. So I call this your level E. And this, so what do I mean by free stuff? Basically, this is how you get in front of your target audience, right? And I got to tell you, there's a gazillion ways you can do it, right? There are so many ways you can access your audience. You could create free resources that allow you to develop that all important know, like, and trust factor. You can do like what I'm doing today, right? Podcast interviews, guest blog posts. You can blog on your own website. You can do talks in your community. You can do webinars, social media, like tons and tons of things, all designed to help you to get in front of your target audience. But make no mistake, at the end of the day, really the ultimate goal is to develop, again, I'm going to say it again, the know, like, and trust amongst your audience to just kind of give them a little taste of what you're all about and, eventually help them to feel comfortable and moving into potentially a paid program with you. Okay, so we started at the top, level A, and at the bottom, level E, which is your free stuff. Now, let's talk about what goes in between. Okay, so moving up one step, I would say your level D is like maybe a 6-week online course, maybe a membership program. It could also potentially be a home study. So there's a few different options, I would say, at your level D. And remember, as we go up the profit pyramid, we're also going up in price, right? So, and frankly, this is where I personally started. Gosh, in both of my businesses, when I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? How do I want to start to scale? So in both cases, I created and launched like a 6 or 8 week, what I would call like a webinar series, right? I did it live. I allocated time for Q&A at the end. So there was some live interaction. Kind of depending on the offer. I know back in my early days, I would include like a Facebook group for questions and more group interaction. I would say only do that if that drives up the price, right? Because that's very time consuming.
As it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very time consuming. So a product or program at this level in the profit pyramid, I'm just going to give you a big ballpark. It's quite a big range. Because again, I would say it could include memberships as well. Usually in a membership, it's like a monthly fee, right? So I would say anything from $47 to $997, depending on the offer. And I know that's a pretty wide range. It just really depends on the offer. So you could do like a membership program at this level. I'd say really a super common price point for a membership is like 47 a month, maybe up to like 97 a month, but they can go higher, right? So they can go higher. I've seen some lower. It's just a ballpark, kind of depending on what's included. So that is one level up, right? So I think you've got lots of options. So like, let's say you want to create a course, healing your gut, just as an example. So maybe we make this an 8-week course. It's got like different modules. It's very hyper focused on the outcome of improving gut health. So I do want to mention that in these more scalable offers, I really, really want to recommend that you become crystal clear on, again, you don't want to try to serve everyone because that's going to backfire. Specificity really is important, especially in the scalable model. So in this example, healing your gut, we've got an 8-week webinar series. Let's say you do like 40 minutes of teaching, maybe 15 minutes each week of Q&A. Maybe you do a community type of thing to answer questions and to get more engagements. There's like handouts and support materials, maybe like a symptom tracking kind of diary. Like there's a lot of things that we can add. So that's an example of what I would label as like a level D, like a 6 or 8 week online course or membership, or possibly a downloadable home study. So there's 2 more levels that I want to talk about. And then we can, if you want, we can talk more specifically about these particular offers. So moving up the profit pyramid, 1 more level, we come to level C. And this is what I would call like a signature program done in a group format. Okay. So it could be like a 3, 4, 5, even 6-month program that is offered in a group type of format. The price point's going to be higher. I would estimate like $997, $34.97, somewhere in that ballpark, give or take. And essentially what you're doing here is you're taking your signature approach. I would just say it's the same treatment approach that you're offering to your one-on-one clients. What you're doing is you're just putting it in a group, right? So I'll give you an example. I did this in my current business. So I have like a specific process that I teach my private clients, right? I take them through these 5 pillars. And so when I started to get quite full and again, didn't really have the time available to just only take private clients, I decided to take this model that was tried and true. Like I know it works. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this exact model. I know it works. I'm going to offer it in a group format. And thus my 6-figure Biz Academy was born.
Awesome. How do labs fit into that model, Leslie?
Great question.
Then I feel like then they're kind of, maybe are they a little bit influenced, if you will, or maybe a little bit, maybe they feel like maybe I want to go up to the one-on-one.
Yeah.
You have to have that lab review, or how do you manage that?
I love that. It's a really good question. So let's go up to level B, because I think level B is where it fits perfectly. I think you could fit labs in a level C in like a signature program group, but I know for sure you can do it in a level B. So let's kind of flesh that out. So I would call that level, and again, we're 1 step below private, right? So it's more scaled than private work, obviously, but there's still a high degree of personalization. So the example I give here would be like a small group hybrid. So let's imagine like you're taking maybe 6 women, hypothetically, 6 menopausal women, right, through this high touch group hybrid program. And so what do I mean by hybrid? Well, in my thought process, the hybrid would mean it's part group. You might have like group coaching elements. You might even have like pre-recorded educational modules for them to review. But the hybrid comes into play with the one-on-one add-on, right?
Mm.
So, and this is where I think labs fit perfectly, because in the program that you're designing, you can say it includes XYZ labs, and you can also add a certain number of one-on-one sessions to the mix. So like maybe it's a 6-month program, hypothetically, and you've got like educational modules, maybe those are pre-recorded. Maybe you've got like, I don't know, every other week group coaching calls to get questions answered. Maybe it includes, in this case, I probably would include like some kind of a community forum to build that sense of community, right? And you're including whatever labs. So it's not really optional, right? It's rolled into the package. And then let's say throughout this 6 months, each client gets a total of maybe 3 one-on-one sessions. One would be for a lab debrief, kind of a finding session.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the next one is, here's your personalized protocol, right? And then maybe the third one is kind of troubleshooting and fine tuning, something like that. So I do think that like a small group hybrid works exceptionally well for a program whereby you want to include labs. I think you could include it in, like I said, I think you could include it in like a signature program as well. And I have seen this done. So let's say, for example, you don't want to include any one-on-one. Okay. Let's just say, hypothetically, you're a licensed practitioner and you, for whatever reason, you've determined that you kind of have to abide by state licensure regulations. So therefore you feel you're not comfortable doing like the personalization for each person in your group. So what you could do is you could potentially include the labs, and you could teach everyone in the group how to interpret the results as a group.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's another option. And I have seen that work as well. Obviously, personalization, I would just say that's preferable. But again, I do want to acknowledge that it's not always possible. So in the cases where for whatever reason you can't, or maybe you just don't want to do one-on-one, like that is completely valid, right? There are other ways to still include those all important labs, right? Because they're critical in many cases. So I still think that's an option, even with the signature program, like the 3 to 6 month signature group program. So that is how I've seen the labs roll in. And of course, it goes without saying that they also fit extremely well in your high level, your one-on-one services. And I would just say, because one of the questions I get all the time is like, how do I know? Should I include the labs in my program? Should I make them a la carte? And what I always say to that is, if you make it optional, the reality is that not everyone's going to do it, right? They're just not. Yeah. So what I would do, and what I have done, because I've been in this position, is to really look at, will this particular lab enable me to do my best work? And if the answer is yes, and the other thing is, if you're going to put it in a package, it really does need to align with, I would say, at least 80% of your population, because you don't want to have like all different offers for different people. Because again, this is part of streamlining. So in a nutshell, I would just say, include the labs that are going to enable you to do your best work. And if you feel like your work will be compromised by not including said lab, then I wouldn't risk it. I would roll it into the program, and I would just make it part of the process. So that's how I've approached it, and that's how I teach my clients to approach it as well. Now, some other labs, maybe they're optional add-ons, right? So not to say they all have to be included, but definitely include the ones that are really, really important for your work. And again, we're in the business of moving people to transformation. So if that lab is going to be instrumental in moving that person to that desired transformation, I say include it.
I really like that approach. And also, I think for some clients, it's really helpful for them to see kind of on a report on paper, like something tangible that they get to kind of take with them. I think
Me
it
too.
can be really impactful kind of on the results too.
Well, the other thing is, so speaking of labs, it is very motivating for clients and patients when they see that lab and they
Yeah.
see the deficits. Like, I think that adds a whole degree of motivation for the client to really get serious and make the necessary changes. So I feel strongly. So a lot of good can come. And of course, instead of guessing and just kind of throwing arrows and hoping for the best, So anyway, I'm a little biased towards including at least maybe a couple of the most important labs into the offer.
Well, Leslie, I know we're coming up on time here. I feel like we could kind of go on for hours on this topic. It's such a unique approach to something like this that we haven't really touched, like I said earlier, on this podcast yet, but it's so valuable, I think, to so many practitioners and listeners right now that are probably in that position. Like, I'm feeling like I have no time, I have no energy, I'm burnt out, I want to help everyone. And I hope that I know that this is going to serve them kind of in that place. So if our listeners do want to connect with you or maybe download some of your resources, get in touch with you, where can we find you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I really would welcome any feedback, any comments, and questions. So a few different things. You can email me directly at Leslie@lesliebitel.com. I do have like I mentioned, a graphic representation of that profit pyramid. I really, really think that will be helpful for anyone who has listened to this episode, because it'll just be a lot easier for you to kind of picture what it is we're talking about. And just remember, when you get this download, pick one place that you want to start, right? And just resist that urge to saying, oh my God, I want to do it all. You can plan it all, right? Like, you can absolutely plan it out, like what you want to do. But in terms of implementation, try to pick one thing and get it off the ground, launch it, make it profitable, and then move to the next thing. But to get your copy of the graphic, it's in a worksheet format. You can go to lesliebitel.com/profit-pyramid. Okay. And then feel free to hop on my website, lesliebitel.com. If I can help you in any way, please reach out. I really am here to support health practitioners. It's my passion to be able to help practitioners kind of move out of this state of overwhelm and into streamlining and saving time and being able to generate more revenue in their businesses.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. We're going to make sure that we link all this in the show notes for you guys so you can easily find her website. And we'll also link that downloadable PDF as well so you can see the visual as to what we were kind of referencing earlier. And again, Leslie, I just want to thank you for your time, for coming on the podcast today. I think this episode was so insightful and very motivating. And I know our listeners are going to pull a lot from it. And until next week, wishing us all vibrant health and wellness.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe so we can continue to pay it forward together. And remember, the key to longevity is knowledge. Keep learning, growing, and tuning in to the Vibrant Wellness Podcast to discover the latest insights and strategies for optimal health. Join us again next week. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The views expressed by guest and host are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy of Vibrant Wellness. As always, consult your healthcare provider before applying any recommendations that you heard here today.